Start.
Yes, you're ready.
Okay, okay, thank you so much. Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. I am Preeti Priya, a faculty member here at IRMA in the area of marketing. I take this opportunity to welcome you all for this special talk session in the ongoing DOCMAD. I consider this as a big privilege and an honor to me to introduce the speaker for this talk, who is none other than the most respected, Param Adarniye, Padma Shri, Dr. Anil Gupta. Dr. Anil Gupta is a visiting faculty now at the Center for Management in Agriculture, Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, from where he retired in 2017. And he is also presently a visiting faculty at Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay. Professor Gupta is known to be an independent thinker, activist for the cause of creative communities and individuals at grassroots, technology institutions, and any other walk of life. And I see from the various reports, as we understand about him, he is purely committed to make this world a more creative, a more compassionate, and a more collaborative place. He is the founder of Honeybee Network, Shrishti, an NGO, which is Society for Research and Initiatives for Sustainable Technologies and Institutions, National Innovation Foundation, and Gyan. Uh, he earned his PhD in management from Kurukshetra University, India, and after doing his master's in biochemical genetics in 1974 from Haryana Agricultural University, Hisar. He is a fellow of National Academy of Agricultural Sciences and the World Academy of Art and Science. Presently, he is executive vice chair of National Innovation Foundation, is president at Shrishti, he is editor at Honeybee, which is a quarterly newsletter on grassroots green innovation. He is secretary at Gyan. uh, he has been a great innovator himself in terms of teaching. The courses like Globalizing and Resurgent India through Innovative Transformation, fondly known as and more popularly known among students as GRIT, which he co-taught with Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, our President of India during 2008 and 10. He taught this course with him. He is amongst the students and IMA alums, as we understand. He's known for his Shodh Yatra, the learning walk in Himalayan region, and his course Creativity, Innovation, Knowledge, Network, and Entrepreneurship. And he has also done a lot of doctoral level courses on institution building, strategic management of intellectual property rights, technology management, etc. He was, as far as his knowledge and experience in intellectual property is concerned, he was known to be the who's of who in this area. And he received Best Researcher at IIM Ahmedabad in 2015 in the 73rd annual meeting of Academy of Management USA conference in 2013. He was awarded with Humanistic Management Lifetime Achievement Award by Humanistic Management Network. He has got a honorary PhD degree from University at Peru. He has got Doctor of Letters from Central University of Odisha in July 12. Uh,
I think we
all-
can we can we can put a stop to
and
that.
the and
I
he
had sent
is
just 4 lines about myself actually. If you didn't see the mail,
something which
just
is
sent 4 lines.
very
Thank
uh,
you.
the recent book by him, Grassroots Innovation, Mine on the Margins Are Not Marginal Minds. As the title of the book is very, very interesting, which excites our curiosity. Similarly, his talk today, which is titled The Dilemma of a Hesitant Academic Sticking One's Neck Out, is equally very interesting, very fascinating, and has actually excited a lot of curiosity in our minds. Hesitant in what sense? What kind of hesitation is it going to talk about? There are wild guesses in my mind, but I would like to keep it with myself. And I would request Professor to talk about to start his talk. Thank you so much, Professor, for
Thank you, Preeti. Thank you, Hippo. Thank you, Shambhu, and all others, friends. First correction, I'm no more the Executive Vice Chair. I stepped down 2 years ago from the NIF. But coming back to the hesitation that academics often have in being true to themselves or their views which are at variance from what is popular.
Yes.
So when there is a trend in society about certain positions, and our view is at variance from those trends, we have to take a call to stand up for what we believe in, keep quiet, or just flow with the tide. And we can choose any of the three options. A scholar in whom society invests so much of resources, so much of respect, so much of expectations, if he or she decides to cave in and quietly and meekly surrender to the dominant forces, then it's a bad bargain for the society. And my reason for today picking up this issue was threefold. When we are participant in policy dialogues, how do we stand up for the positions that we think, in our view, for good reason, to be in the interest of society? And I'll give some examples. Secondly, when there is a professional discourse among the colleagues, among the professional peers, in a conference, in a meeting, in a working group of professional society or wherever, how do we perform the gatekeeper function at one level between the upcoming scholar, the students, and the Mathadish, the high priest of intellectual world, the senior professors, and the deans and the directors? Do we have a role in intervening on behalf of a vulnerable student who easily can be compromised because of the power that we exercise? And like any other institution, academic institutions are no exception to the play of power. Third dimension of my talk today is about exchange that takes place between the knowledge of formal and informal sector. What is our accountability? What is the basic ethical code? Are we responsible to people from whom we collect data? Do we ever share with them our findings? And if not, then how are we different from other exploiters in society? It's the realization that dawned on me 30 years ago when we set up the Honeybee Network. And finally, I like to share the pros and cons of sticking your neck out. Yes, very seldom have intellectuals their neck has been put on a chopper. The maximum that an academic has to lose is invitation from a committee or a conference or a membership of some bodies. That's all is there at stake, nothing much. And unfortunately, very large number of academics fall for this small carrot and compromise. Say yes when they should be saying no. So the first point that I want to bring out today is the fortitude. The fortitude is the capacity to say no when the world wants to hear yes. And I would like young scholars to reflect on this. If your findings are at variance from what the established view is, would you modify your findings? Would you state your findings hesitatingly, with little doubt, self-doubt? And instead of asserting wherever you found evidence was strong, you will say, maybe in my data there was a gap, otherwise what the high priest have said is so and so, and maybe that might be the truth. So fortitude requires standing up for what one believes. And I don't think that it happens every day that you have to take a position. It happens once in a while. But in what way do we acknowledge the vulnerability that we face in our research process? So let me share some situations which might help you. And I'll try to be brief so that we can leave enough time for question answers. And hopefully I'll gain myself some new insights from what you feel about my views. So there was a long time ago, 30 years ago, a debate in the country on trickle-down modified hypothesis. The economist who wrote about it was at that time Deputy Chair of the Planning Commission, Dr. Monte Carlo. He came to our institute and showed with data as to how, in certain conditions, trickle-down does indeed take place. And also showed that in certain regions, the poverty has been considerably reduced, which is empirically true. It was reduced and has been reduced subsequently, and so on. So at that time, the NREGA was just in the infancy. Public works program were in the infancy. And I said, all right, so why don't we have a norm that employment program will operate only on those districts where market wage rate is less than the minimum wage rate? You will agree that in the regions where demand is lesser than supply, the prices will be lower. The value of the wage rate will be lower. But the government wanted to implement it everywhere. And doesn't matter which government. Because spending money is easier in Burdwan than in Purulia. In developed regions, there is better infrastructure, more motivated, or let us say smart officials, bureaucrats, easier to spend money. So if evaluation of a program or a joint secretary or secretary is on the basis of budget utilized, then naturally they will like to have policy in such a manner that budget exhaustion becomes easier. Whether that serves the policy goal properly or not is a matter of detail. So I wrote, and surely the idea didn't work out. I failed. Policy succeeded in universalizing the NREGA. So in regions where market wage was higher than the minimum wage rate, you were competing and trying to depress by creating an alternative way of jobs with much less labor and much less effort. And naturally, there were people who were protesting against that, but that's a different matter. Let me give you another example. There was an index made by Planning Commission a long time ago on defining the poor regions. And 40% weightage was of landless people. So my dear friend Yugandhar was at that time member Planning Commission. He was advisor in Planning Commission. I had known him well, very dear friend. And there were many other members at that time who knew me. So I wrote to them that, look, do you know where are landless people more? In the developed region. In the less developed region, where land values are low, everybody has some piece of land. In Rajasthan, for example, you will not find landless people easily. In Eastern India, you will find people with maybe 10 cents, 20 cents land, because land is very productive there. So large number of subplots, but completely landless people will be lesser. Marginal farmers will be many more. But in Haryana, Western UP, where people come to do work as immigrant laborer, you have a high number of landless people. So index was wrong. Index was wrong. Again, I wrote that, look, you've done a very basic fallacy here. You have given a lot of weightage to a variable which actually is directly correlated with productivity of land and resources. So more productive land, more jobs, more immigration of labor, so more landless people. The point I'm trying to illustrate is that there will be occasions when you will have a view different from what the dominant policy view is. You can choose with your acumen to question that. You can choose to let it pass. If society suffers, so it be. It may suffer even with your protest, doesn't matter, but at least your conscience will forgive you for having stood up by what you believe in. There are many other examples, many other examples. Let me give you a recent example of my failure. So in 2013, the Finance Commission was chaired by my very dear friend, very respected friend, Dr. Kelkar. So we gave a proposal to him about District Innovation Fund. So 2 crores as a part of that, as a matter of record, was given to 700 districts each. But one flaw happened in the policy. So the day we were discussing this policy in the office of Dr. Kelkar, Dr. Reddy, former Chief Secretary Andhra Pradesh, former Governor Reserve Bank, came in and he joined the discussion. So during the discussion, he mentioned that when he was Chief Secretary, there was a policy of last mile investment. Many times there is some infrastructure is missing. You have primary health center, but autoclave is not there or windows are not there. Why don't you add this also? So Dr. Kelkar added. I was not happy, but nevertheless he added. What happened? 99% of the money was spent on infrastructure, practically nothing on innovation. So I've written to the 15th Finance Commission, again, Dr. N.K. Singh, that please consider that, changing this policy and make it focused only on innovation and not anything else. Now, the point I'm trying to home is that whether somebody likes you, somebody doesn't like you, there could be various reasons because of which policies get distorted. What's our job as a scholar, as a public policy researcher, if we are involved in that spirit, that field? Our job is to demonstrate with the logic that we have as to what is the flaw in the policy and then raise that issue. This problem arises in any discipline, not just in public policy or in public systems, but also in hardcore other management fields. You will have similar dilemma that will arise. So let's look at a very interesting dilemma that we have of whether to use all the data that we collect in our research. There's a finding which is conflicting with what your bias is, what your presupposed thesis is, what to do. So there's a very famous novel, Mandarin, written by Simone de Beauvoir, the companion of Jean-Paul Sartre, a famous philosopher of existentialism, French philosopher. Simone de Beauvoir is famous for having written the book Second Sex, which was very famous on gender issues, gender discrimination. So in the Mandarin, there is a passage where a journalist has been sent to Russia to discover concentration camps. And he finds very strong evidence of the presence of concentration camps. The editor of the Le Monde newspaper is in a dilemma. If he publishes the news, he betrays the left interest of the leftist parties. If he does not publish, he betrays the journalistic ethics. Choice is difficult. The novel says, the story goes that he didn't publish and the journalist resigned and left. Probably Sartre himself was the editor and he was caricatured by his companion. Many times we have this situation. When data speaks to us something different from what we want, we have a choice to speak up, accept, become paradoxical. You know, today the consensus-driven science, social science, has considerably moved away to a paradoxical situation where we have to deal with contradictions at the same time. We have to accept that it is very difficult to take only one view. There may be multiple views, or at least 2 views, and truth may lie on both sides. Given the situation that we have, it may be a seesaw. There's a very interesting paper by Nostrum and I forgot the first author, on camping on seesaws. So when you have a situation which is paradoxical, your duty as a scholar is to point out both the positions and let the reader choose, or the peers choose as to which position would they like to comply with. Let me move to the second part of my discussion about professional norms of ethics in scholarship. Most of you collect data from people, particularly consumers, farmers, artisans, mechanics. And people in good faith give you this data. They hope that you will put this data to good use. You analyze the data, write the paper. Very seldom, 9 out of 10 times, please pardon me if I'm wrong, and you are right, you are well within your right to question me and prove me wrong and find contradictions in my own conduct. I'll appreciate that. We don't share the finding with the people from whom we collect data. Who gave us this authority that we can collect data from anybody we want, interpret it the way we want, publish, become famous, respected in our profession? But we have no accountability at all toward those who gave us this data in good faith that we will put it to good use. What is good use? People have a right to know as to what did you find. And maybe the views that one respondent gave may be different from the view that you found from majority, and therefore they would like to see where they stand vis-a-vis their own views. It will improve their understanding of their own society, their own community. Capacity building has to take place both sides. When we collect data and become scholar, our capacity is increasing. But what about the capacity of the consumers, capacity of the people who are responding to your question? Apart from the fact that very rarely do we give prior informed consent. So when we talk to illiterate people, do we record on video that what the pros and cons are of the answering the questions that we're asking? So once we were sharing this finding in Jabua, we were doing a study, Learning to Unlearn, that the title of the book. And one member of the tribal community mentioned that, look, you have mentioned that we make liquor, and police will arrest us if they come to know of our name. Please remove this detail. You can say that people in this region make liquor, but don't say that I make liquor. We had to remove that finding because that's not correct. We are putting them in danger. I have no right to put his life in danger. And I wouldn't realize it. It was way back in 84, 85. I wouldn't have realized this issue as seriously unless I had shared the finding. There were many more things that people share with you when you share the finding. Oh, I didn't know why you were asking the question. Now I know why you were asking the question. I'll tell you something more. This something more comes only when you share back the findings. So in terms of efficiency, sharing back the finding is useful. In terms of ethics, sharing back the finding is the right thing. So on both efficiency ground and ethical ground, it helps. Try it sometime. I'm just saying, give a chance to this idea, experiment with it, share your findings in an easily comprehensible manner, not with the jargon that we have in our discipline, and then see what response you get. If you don't get any new insight, please tell me, and I will change my views. But my confidence of all these years says that you will get such insight that you did not get in the first attempt of collecting data, and you will realize that the people are appreciating your sense of reciprocity and are very keen, very kind to share that data, which they didn't share in the first place because they didn't know the whole context of the study. Try it out. Let me come to another dimension of professional discourse. 85, 86, when I came back from Bangladesh, I did a study. I was disturbed about certain things in my conduct. So I did a study on personal communications. Now, scholarship is not possible unless we talk to each other. In the corridor, in the cafe, somewhere, walking, talking, somewhere. Somebody said, look, I saw your seminar, you made this point, but I thought you should have looked at that paper also, or you should have looked at that point. that so-and-so has said, or maybe in my view, there will be another interpretation. And you say, yes, sir, or yes, madam, I'll take care of that, and so on. And you may, in all good faith, take care of that. But sometimes we forget to acknowledge that comment, because that comment was already made. Now, this is not a problem only in India. World over, the proportion of personal communications in citations is very low. Some editors may not like it, that's a different matter, but it is useful to mention. Even if somebody brings a reference, so I'll give you an example of my mistake and then how did I make a confession. And the confession, the punishment I give to myself is that I tell this incident in every such meeting to just bring out how, with all my sensitivity, I made a mistake. So there was a framework I made. On one hand, there was access, assurance, ability. Other hand, resources, institutions, and technology. And I said, when you try to build institutions, we need to look at access to resources, access to technology, access to institutions, and so on. So about the assurances, vertical and horizontal assurances, and the ability, that is skill of dealing with resources, dealing with institutions, dealing with technology. So one student, Salil Dave, very bright student, came to me after the class. Sir, don't you think attitudes also make a difference? I said, yes, attitudes are both endogenous and exogenous variable. They are shaped by our actions and they shape our action, both. So I did that. But I did not attribute him. In the paper, I forgot. I ignored it. So I shared this example that sometime it happens, and the only recourse after that is to repeat this mistake as often as possible publicly, so that other scholars realize that yes, mistakes are possible, but once we are conscious of it, we will make less often this mistake. So I'm confessing this, and I have confessed this numberless times when I talk to young scholars, because it is an evidence, empirical evidence of my own conduct, defect in my conduct. And therefore, none of you should feel that I'm trying to sermonize. Please, no, I'm sharing my own dilemmas with you, so that you get courage to acknowledge your own dilemma, which may be different from mine. And how do we become authentic scholar? What is authenticity? We're all hypocrite. But the gap between what we profess and what we practice can be reduced after all. That's the purpose why I'm here with you. We cannot become completely Gandhian, but we can try to. Why not? No harm. So it is important that we have reciprocity, respect, and responsibility towards people whom we collect data, including our students. If they make a point in the class, which is very insightful, I'll give you another example, a positive example now, this time. So if you go to techpedia.in/patent, you will find a database which two of my students made. They have put together 0.9 million abandoned patents in US Patent and Trademark Office. Devika Kaushal and Zaigam Khan. They were both IIM Nagpur students. They were doing that course because IIM Nagpur was being set up by IRMA, mentoring by IRMA. So the students used to come to IRMA to do some courses here because there was not enough faculty there. And building was not there and so on. So they were in my class as my peer, and both of them were very bright. And after they joined the job, they said, sir, we have some time on a weekend. Give us a challenge. One of your unmet wish, which you feel should have been done and could not be done. And I gave them this task. I said, look, I wrote a paper in 2003 on opportunity in expired patents, and I have not been able to build a database. But I think if such a database is built, it will be very useful to scholars, entrepreneurs, small startups, everybody. Because these patents were issued, they were valid pieces of intellectual property, but then they were not renewed, so they got abandoned. In this case, an average age of what, 6.5 years. There are 3 times you have to renew in US, 3.5 years, 7.5 years, and 11.5 years. And fees keeps on increasing. So if you don't find market or if you don't have resources, you may not renew it. So they put together 0.9 million such patents available on our website without any password, without any restriction to anybody, anywhere in the world. Such a database was never built. Now that brings me to the last issue, creating public goods, creating knowledge public goods. If you look at your upload to download ratio, don't mind my asking this question, please. As a professor, I have some privileges, and one of my privileges, I can ask any question I want. You are free not to answer. So I want to know from you, when I'm going to stop in a few minutes, what is your upload to download ratio of the last week or last month or last year? Is there anyone in the audience whose upload to download ratio is more than 1? That means we have uploaded more content and shared with the world than what we downloaded. We have aspiration to be a so-called Vishwa Guru. When you are not willing to share the assignment that you have written for the courses, your projects that you have done with the professors or yourself, blogs that you can write and you have not shared, how will I know what you think about various issues in your profession? Anila, the point is not to say only low. It has to be monitored. A change not monitored is a change not desired. I wrote in a paper on cooperatives way back in 1984, and I.G. Patel was the director, and he read this paper and he said, he had a 1-hour discussion with me on this sentence: change not monitored is a change not desired. And I think we should have indicators for our own professional growth, for our own professional authenticity, for our own measurement of what we are learning and not learning. How much am I discrediting myself? How many views have undergone a change because of my learning of new ideas? How many times am I contradicting myself? All of these have to be monitored. The last point. 99% citations in PhD thesis. Hippo, carefully सुनना इस बात को भाई, प्रीति ध्यान से सुनिए. 99% references are approvingly cited. You agree with all of them? क्या तमाशा है ये? If you agree with 99% of the people in the world who have said something before you wrote your thesis, then where is the space for you to stand up? आप सबसे agree करते हैं. How will you get known for the views that you have contributed first time to the profession? क्या हुआ आपकी एजेंसी को? There are two things in life: autonomy and agency. Autonomy is freedom to take decision. Agency is willingness and ability to use that freedom. आपके पास freedom तो है, किसको साइड करें ना करें वो आपकी मर्जी है. But you don't use your agency to contradict, question, disagree. Without dissent and diversity, there is no originality, there is no innovation, there is nothing new that we can produce. Please understand that. Dissent is the salt of life. Diversity is the essence of life. How can we not have people with whom we don't agree? And then we carve out our own niche in our own profession of thoughts and views which will make you known. Because you had the courage of conviction, either empirically or conceptually, to contradict what you have said. So my dear friends, I'll stop here. I'll be happy to answer your questions if I can. But please remember that overall what I'm trying to say is stick your neck out. Stick your neck out when in doubt. Say what you believe in. In the short run, you might feel that you will lose. In the long run, you will be known for what you have stood for. In the short run, you may be excluded from certain in-groups. You may be marginalized. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. But in the long run, society will respect you for what you have stood for. I always say, and let me make a controversial statement now, just for a minute, to tell you that you can still be truthful to yourself and not be seen as a arrogant and, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhna, Sarve Santu Niramaya. This is one of the very famous Vedic mantra. Sarve Bhavantu Pashyantu Ma Kashyati Bhava. In our philosophy, we are supposed to pray for all living beings, not just follower of Ram or follower of Shiva or follower of Allah or follower of so-and-so. No, all living beings. Your prayer is not complete. How can we be exclusionary then? How can we discriminate? We cannot. It's a separate matter. Our personal views and our intellectual views or our professional views may be at variance. I don't mind. But what I'm trying to say is when you believe something is so fundamental, you decide. You decide. You are free to choose your sample. You are free to choose your respondent. You are free to analyze the data. You are free to use the framework. All of that freedom we have. And then we say what we believe in. So when we wanted to prove that mind on the margin are not marginal minds, we proved it, no? We proved that regions which are seen as so-called backwaters of our country are so creative, are so rich in generosity, ethical, professional, community, social, and of course intellectual. We proved it, empirically proved it. And now we are working with UNDP Innovation Extension Lab Network and trying to build capacity of 78 countries. Now it's going to be 108 countries through online teaching. Management of inclusive innovation for social transformation. MIST, that's the title of the course. Because I believe that there is a demand all over the world for thought that you believe in. Now let me come to the question. Anila has asked a question. Anila, would you like to speak up or should I read it up? I think if you speak up is better.
Yeah, Anila is asking this question. Sir, will not
Can
our
I-
agency
Can let her speak up. Let her speak up. Let her speak up. Priti, I want to hear her voice. Yes.
Yeah,
Go
Anila,
ahead, Anila.
Sir, good afternoon. Thank you for the lecture, sir. I have a doubt. Sir, when we try to, explore our agencies, won't we be limited by our external environment and the conditioning that we had?
Yes. Conditioning is important. Environment, I don't care. Environment, I'll ignore. Not because we are vulnerable. First of all, we assume more vulnerability than we actually have. We are not as fragile. A scholar is not as vulnerable as one believes to be, but I agree, given the power structure in our institutions, a bad guide can spoil your thesis. I mean, that's possible, theoretically possible. But generally, students can prevail. And there are always some colleagues who will stand up for you. But question is, what are you saying? You're saying that you disagree with your guide, you disagree with a very dominant view which your guide prefers, but you don't.
No, sir. Actually, I'm not talking about the guide as such. I'm talking about the institutional, limitations. When you are trying to, there is a dominant view of certain things, like the way one particular institution is being defined or one particular norm is being created. That is created based on the majoritarian view of an aspect. And if we are not subscribing to that majoritarian aspect, say for example, if we try to disagree with certain notions of freedom or certain notions of development, then there is a high chance that we will not be able to explore our agency even if we want to explore it.
Why? What makes you believe that?
Because, say for example, if I believe that women empowerment, if I deviate from the established norms of conceptualizing women empowerment at a quantitative level and try to say that women empowerment is can be qualitatively computed, and if a woman is able to feel that she is empowered, rather than subscribing to these notions of social empowerment, political, financial empowerment, then we will be able to assume that she is empowered, whether she is uneducated, whether she is not having any kind of all those things. But our
okay. Let me give you an example. We recently did an experiment both in IRMA and in IIT Bombay. IIT Bombay, Chaku from IDC was my co-colleague. I mean, we were both teaching this course in technology design and innovation, and there were about 200 students. So I asked in a class, who eats the cold food in your family? After some silence, the answer was mother. So I said, what crime has she committed that she must only eat the cold food and you must eat the hot food? Now, students were in a dilemma. Sir, mother insists that. I said, all right. So for 1 week, You will cook hot food for her and send us the photographs of your cooking. So obviously, if you can't make a round roti, doesn't matter. Send us the first roti that you've made. And after 1 week, when you tried it for 1 week, whether you improved or not, send us the photograph of the kitchen and send us what your dear mother say. They all had to do that. They discovered many other problems in the process. They discovered that the belan jo hota hai, मैं हिंदी बोलूं क्या? Everybody understand Hindi?
Most of
No? Well, anyway, I'll speak in Hindi and English both. तो बेलन जो होता है, जो चकला होता है जिसके ऊपर रोटी बनाते हैं, उसकी हाइट ज्यादा नहीं होती है, about 2 inches or 2.5 inches. So mother has to, or lady has to bend forward. यहाँ दर्द होता है, here, because you are bending forward to do this rolling action. So they discovered that उसकी हाइट थोड़ा सीधा हो, ज्यादा हो जाए, 3-4 inch हो जाए, तो then mother will not have to bend. Now mother had adjusted to this problem. Women have a great capacity to adjust and adapt to the problem rather than transcending, because historically they were never allowed to be blacksmith and carpenter in our country. Please understand, their agency was denuded by taking away the tool making skills from them. Historically, I'm talking about. Now, of course, you can be engineer of any discipline. So what do? We change the discourse by making it empirical question and making them embarrassed by the fact that they talk about women empowerment, but women in their own family, the one whom they love most, is suffering for no fault of hers. And then students shared the photograph of what they cooked for her mother and so on. So what I'm trying to say, sometimes we can convert problem into action research, action learning, rather than only rhetorical and polemic questions. Because when we do something and experience that pain, samvedana as we call it, then the realization that will occur to me may stay with me longer than only an argument in the class. And I thought, I cannot persuade people to become more sensitive to gender issues by merely talking about it. They have to go through this process. They have to realize that the most intimate relationship is not bereft of the bias. Even in such a relationship, we take our agency for granted and discount somebody else's agency. Out of, you may call it emotionally, you may call it out of affection, you may call it whatever the word we may use, but it is not fair. It is not fair. Not every day she should eat cold food. Someday you should eat cold food. क्या दिक्कत है? सब लोग हाथ बैठे खा लो ना खाना, फिर क्या दिक्कत है? जरूरी गर्म खाना है. वो तो कहेगी, माँ तो कहेगी, वो प्यार करती है ना, उसने गुनाह किया प्यार करने का. Let's go to the next question. Academicians are good interpreter than fact finder of a problem in context of policy discourse, making policy discourse more complex. Despite having several intellectual advances such theory models, why such still policy drift away from expectation? Shahidul, issue is not policy drifts away. In fact, policy does provide many times space for experimentation to take place. I mean, I know in 2007, I had to, Dr. Bhan was director, secretary DBT, and he requested me and my colleagues to write a report on creating a new organization which will provide support to startups. So we created BIREC, Biotechnology Industry Research Assistance Council. That was created in 2012, but it was approved in 2009 by the cabinet without any question. And today it has spawned more than 4,000 startups in just about 7-8 years. One of the organizations which invests up to 50 lakhs just in an idea. You have no proof of concept, you have no prototype, just an idea. As a scholar, that too as a student. And it gives you up to 50 lakh rupees. Nobody else ever did that in the history of this country. I'm very proud, very happy to be associated with it. Yesterday, we gave the Ghanaian Technological Innovation Award at the hand of Dr. Harshvardhan, Science and Technology Minister. 15 students get 15 lakh each. All this was possible because we pursued. There was no precedence. So I'm not convinced that policy, we can only interpret, we can influence, and we can change, and we can create new policy instruments. When District Innovation Fund was created, as I told you earlier, there was no precedence in this country. We created one. There was no precedence for National Innovation Foundation. There was no precedence for the entire structure. Nowhere in the world. We created it. And I'm sure when Amul was created, right in your backyard, was there any precedence? There was no precedence. And you know what Dr. Kurian said? He said the headquarters of Amul will be here where the knowledge exists, not in Delhi. What a beautiful idea. And I got inspiration from that. So we created infrastructure headquarters in Gambati, in Gandhinagar, not in Delhi. Why? When we have produced knowledge here, we have made a case here, then headquarters should be here. And mind you, if we can make this as a policy instrument, that excellence, wherever excellence is, for example, Mizoram has the highest number of rooftop water harvesting structures in the country. So if you have any discussion on water harvesting, have it in Mizoram. You will, by definition, the policy will be more responsive to the people who conserve water or rooftop water. So in other words, wherever there is excellence, the discussion on the policy should take place there. Yes, Prafulla?
Sir, there is a question by Professor Shailendra as well.
Yes, sorry, I missed that. Let me first, is it Anand? Where is the...
2 points. Can this become part of mainstream research methodology course which teach only positivism? Second, when the research and publication are linked to funding and incentives, where is the autonomy? Academicians in general ready for compromise.
Second part I will take up first. I will be making a honest confession, and don't mind my saying that. I hope my colleagues will not mind it. So I was a member of a committee in IRMA, which was to decide incentives, exactly the point that you made, for research and publications. So everybody else was saying you should give 5 lakh for this, 3 lakh for that. And I said, don't we get salaries? People said, yes. Then what are we paid salary for? Isn't it to produce excellence? Why do I need extra incentive to produce good writing? So in other words, if I get 5 lakh, I'll write a better paper. And if I write 3 lakh, I will write a shoddy paper. That means there's nothing innate in me about what quality of work I want to do. It is what somebody else decides. This was anathema to me. So I wrote a note of dissent, which was finding your own North Star, Dhruv Tara. हर एक को अपनी जिंदगी में अपना ध्रुव तारा ढूंढना है. And that will propel you both. It will pull you and push you. Push you to bring you closer to the goal that you have set up, no matter what hardship, no matter what difficulty. And if it takes time to discover that, I agree. But once you discover it, it's worthwhile pursuing that, no matter what cost. As I said, in the short run, people will bypass you. People will try to outbeat you. People will like to browbeat you. People will like to do all kinds of, sometimes even the word victimization can be used. But so what happens? Doesn't matter. In the same year, why my probation was extended in IRMA, another colleague who didn't get the Best Teacher Award, who didn't have publications in international journals, 3 papers in journal, which I had, his probation was not extended. He was confirmed. Mine was extended because I was an odd nut. I used to pick up arguments. I didn't want to pay rent. What I'm trying to say, such things happen, but then you forget about them, It becomes a small footnote somewhere in the history. Nobody remembers that. Nobody will know me that since my probation was ended, I'm a poor researcher. No, I was not. It just so happened in the dynamics of the things. So, okay, organizations can be less fair than profession. When you send an article to a journal, it is anonymously reviewed with all the biases what may be there. The fact is that it doesn't matter whether you are a student, you are an assistant professor, or a full professor. So in other words, profession is more fair than organization. And my advice to my young scholar friend is, don't look for positions in the organization. I didn't accept any position I IRMA after 88, after I was research and publication chairman. I did not accept even CMA chairmanship, never. For all the directors came and tried to pursue it, I said, no, give positions to those for whom that is the only reward. I enjoy what I do. Why do I need rewards? So I would agree with that external incentives are not the best way to bring out the best in people. Yes, people need resources. Give them freedom. Give them resources. If they want to have 10 researcher staff, I had more space in IRMA than any professor anywhere in the world. I had so many rooms, 7, 8 rooms. Can you believe it? And people somehow will complain a little bit. And one day, one colleague complained to the director after faculty meeting. And he said, look, Anil has so much staff. So I said, and he was my dear friend, so I can take his name. I said, Raghu, the difference between you and me is only one. You do consultancy, I do consultancy. You do consultancy to pay yourself, I pay to my staff. That's the difference. Now, when directors see that you're earning money and spending on your staff to answer questions for which you will not get a sponsorship, please understand, somebody said research, resources, no. If you don't invest in your ideas, why will the world invest in your ideas? Please understand this question. If you do consultancy, my suggestion to my young friends is do consultancy, not a problem. Invest some part of it, a large part of it, in ideas for which you will not get a sponsorship. But you will satisfy your curiosity, and that habit will make you a good scholar. I can say that. Anand Pandey.
Sir, Praful also has a question.
Achha, okay, I'll come there. Tapan is after that or before this?
Tapan is after that. First
Okay, so
Praful, Anand, and then Tap. Sunil,
okay.
There are many now.
Okay, okay. So let me go to, send me these questions also afterwards.
Yeah, sure.
Praful. Well, no, Karl Popper did not say this. Karl Popper and Wittgenstein, who had a debate, Karl Popper said theory precedes data. Wittgenstein said that if theory precedes data and if my data is not compatible with theory, will I not collect such data? That's where action learning, that's where iterative learning, that's where the grounded theory has helped us in understanding that when you try to collect data which is not compatible with the existing theories, that is when you change the theories, you know. So suggestion of Karl Popper was dangerous. He's a great philosopher. But to say that, no, he is partly true. When we define a variable, that variable is a part of a framework, that framework is part of a theory. So in that sense, yes, theory does influence your definition of variables. But you can include variables which others may not have. And thereby, I give you a small example. I did a survey in 83, 84, and I was trying to look at the efficiency of the poor people and which enterprise do they have efficiency. So I looked at that when you calculate the value of sheep and goat, the rich people had no advantage in the value of an asset, which actually is which is where the efficiency depends upon grazing efficiency, not on stall fed. So sheep generally is grazed animal, and the poor sheep had as much value as the rich man's sheep. Now it's an empirical value finding that in those assets where purchased input don't play a role, poor could be as efficient as rich, if not more. It's an empirical question. Let us resolve it empirically.
Then we have Sir Anand Pandey.
Anand, yes. Actionable research finding with local. Now, you said that I have doubt if our findings to share with respondent only will be useful unless we convince them that we have shared our results with decision. No. Please understand, you have dual responsibility. You are right. Many times we tell scholars, we tell our respondent that, look, we will share your finding with the policymakers. And you do sometimes. You send a copy of a report or paper to the secretaries or to the minister or to the planning commission or Niti Aayog or wherever. That's fine. That's okay. But it does not obviate and does not reduce the value of sharing with the people, because people will then understand what did you infer from the data they gave. And don't underestimate their power to make sense of information. So once in Kutch, I was talking for half an hour in Shodhyatra, why people should not use chemical pesticide and why herbal pesticide are more efficient or effective, less harmful, etc. etc. After that, one farmer got up and said, Professor, we understood what you're saying. I said, what am I saying? You are saying that all plants which animals don't eat are a source of potential pesticide. He summarized in one line what I took half an hour to say. He had wisdom, I had knowledge. I have many examples of that kind. So my suggestion is, please try it out. Please share your finding, people. Just experience it yourself. The point I'm making is, don't go by my assertion. Do your own experiment. And if you find that you have learned something new, please carry on. If you don't, give it up. I mean, very simple. But at least give a chance to this idea. That's all I'm saying. Sunil.
Yeah.
Industry institution interaction is hugely important to higher technical education. Of course it is. Only thing is, within the industry, when you take, there's a critical organizational theory, and many people have written on papers on that when we talk to industry or organizations, we talk to management. And we share finding only with the management, not with the workers. So is it possible that you create such a framework of your project that management will give you permission to both interview and share your thoughts with the workers also? Try to do that. We have tried when we were reorganizing a bank many years ago. We asked that permission, and they didn't mind. They didn't see the point. They didn't think that it was a very difficult thing to agree to. So they agreed. So we talked to the clerks, we talked to the staff, as well as to the senior people, and that's all right. So I think this is something that is possible to do. Abhishek, that's true. Incentives are enough to sway even when we know that what we stand for. Is it time to look for professions that take us closer to the grassroots? Look, no matter which profession we are a part of, every profession gives you an ability to put yourself into the situation of the researched counterpart. So allow, just as we are discussing questions, you can question my values, you can do interview, you can ask me, you can critique me. Same way people can critique you, people can ask questions. So I would say that there is no profession which does not let you practice what we're talking about here, no matter what profession. So let me give you an example. I was once invited for giving a talk at PGI Chandigarh, one of the very famous medical institute, one of the top medical institute of the country. So they get about 10,000 patients every day. So I asked them, do you analyze the data? No, sir. So that means senior doctors who diagnose, they have a lot of empirical knowledge of what works and what doesn't work. They have huge knowledge. And that's why we go to these doctors, but they have not put it down into the heuristics, in the algorithms, so that younger doctors can learn better by looking at the patterns. How many different kinds of malaria are there? Malaria with this gets treated in this manner. The various kinds of flowcharts and so on. There's no analysis of this data. Now, if they should analyze the data and share back with the patients, patients can improve their quality of life by being aware that with these conditions, same ailment, patient live longer, and with these conditions, patient lives less, same problem. Other things equal, same ailment. But the kind of lifestyle you follow, the kind of food that you take, kind of exercise that you do, makes so much difference to your quality of life. Now, these are things that we are not, doctors tell this by their empirical experience, but this is not database. These are not data driven. I think we need to be sometime data driven whenever we can. Sunil Bakru, can you please give ideas to make higher education more industry relevant? Well, it depends. We did a database called as techpedia.in. I don't know if anyone of you has seen that. Techpedia.in, why did we create this database, first of all? And mind you, we are the largest provider in the world of open source data on people's knowledge. Nowhere, Wikipedia is smaller than our database. So Techpedia has 200,000 engineering project information. These projects have been done by 550,000 students of India. Why did we do that? We wanted originality to be promoted. No student should do in our country what has been done before. So if all the projects of IRMA, all assignments, all projects are uploaded on the website, two things will happen. One, IRMA or IRMA for that matter, two things will happen. One, people will come to know, the user of our research will come to know that this is finding. They may benefit from it, they may use it, they may try it. So is the case with industry. You have done market research. We did a study on green consumerism. You can find it on the net. And people at that time, when it was just beginning, could have understood where the green consumer movement is. So if those who wanted to go in green markets, green consumer, could have benefited from it. Second, you will get feedback. You will get feedback from people whom you don't know. I met so many friends around the world who I never met, who only I met because they read something on the blog or otherwise and wrote to me. So you make new friends. Scholarship helps you to bring you in touch with people who you don't know where they are. But once you upload your work content, it helps. So I think creating knowledge, public goods of knowledge, sharing your work openly and without restrictions is a sine qua non of expanding the domain of encounters with the strangers whom you can't find out, but you need to, because they have an interest in your work. They may be using your work, they may want to use it, or they may suggest, can you do this? But also, maybe this will become more useful. So I think that is something that I will strongly suggest. Do we have time still, or we have just 1 minute?
Just one.
So anything that anybody would like to say, I will be happy to hear. Anybody who strongly disagrees with me, if that person can speak up, I will greatly appreciate. Somebody who believes that what I'm saying is absurd nonsense wouldn't work.
Sir, can you elaborate a little more on the consequences of sticking necks out months now? Because, yeah, I understand there are you have spoken about the short-term losses in terms of people can outwit you. But yes, especially when you were talking about on your second point, the professional ethics, especially when you were actually referring to the power structure and you talked about that academic institutions are no different than any other power structure, right? And you gave a lot of examples in terms of incentive designing at IMA or variety of other things. But there are like now I believe even there are a lot of threats around in these kind of power structures. So how as scholars it looks like that sometimes should we go completely independent and do our
I
study?
should tell you one part of the story I forgot to tell. I opted out of that committee.
Yes.
So when the report was submitted, I said there are two choices: either you take my note of dissent,
Yeah.
or you let me opt out. But I will not sign this. I don't want to be remembered as someone who believed excellence can be monetized.
Right.
And therefore, so what one consequence of such thing is you arrive at it is not escapism, but it is a amiable parting of ways in which you disassociate yourself from an action with which you don't agree with.
Yeah.
So it is a very decent way, very polite way
Yeah.
of sticking your neck out, but not being penalized for that. I quietly told my colleagues that, look, I will have great difficulty standing up with what you are saying. Please pardon me, don't forgive me. And while you should go ahead with what you're doing, let me not put my name on it, if you don't mind. And they agreed to that. And that was a very nice way of being out of that. And I know that that decision must have been appreciated by many people, but I thought that when, there's a concept of swanta hai sukha hai,
Yes. As
अपनी
recalled
खुशी के
by
लिए,
Tulsidas ji.
as the greatest reward you give is the happiness you get out of what you do.
Right.
Swanta hai sukha hai. Kindly, my dear friends, young friends, reflect on this phrase, swanta hai sukha hai. अपनी खुशी के लिए करो ना यार जो करना है. तो फिर दिक्कत नहीं आती ना. Because who can reward somebody? Who can give me reward? Only I myself. If I don't feel good after a class, I feel miserable because something happened which I did not expect. And teachers come to know after the class how did the class go or how did the decision go. Then that is the punishment you get. You feel miserable about your interactions with the students if you're not done well, or if your paper. I mean, there's a my colleague whom I respect, a great Anamika. One of her paper was revised 16 times. One day she got exasperated. She said, and she published in Word Development, and she has published in Agricultural Systems, and she's published in top journals. I mean, it is not that she had any poor record. But sometimes things may happen which you file a great injustice. That's part of life.
Yeah.
You can't insist that unless every society becomes fair, I will not indulge and participate with them. ऐसा थोड़ी होता है.
ऐसा नहीं होता.
So Priya, please understand that unfairness will exist and will continue to exist so long as power differential exists. But we have to navigate our way while maintaining our self-respect.
Right.
And स्वाभिमान भी रहना चाहिए, आत्मविश्वास भी रहना चाहिए, लेकिन स्वाभिमान को दम्भ नहीं बनाना है. मतलब you should not become arrogance. There's a difference between self-respect and self-righteousness. Righteousness can put us into trouble more than respect. And I would only say that it is useful to stick your neck out when you very strongly. You don't dance at every party.
Yes.
So you don't stick your neck out on every issue. You're not a troublemaker.
Yeah.
In many respects, you will keep quiet and just be done with it. Ignore कर देंगे ना बहुत सी चीजों को हम लोग.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't it?
Yes.
But there are few things which attack your core value. उसको कैसे आप करोगे? So then there is a two choice. One, I will not do wrong in my practice. But if you do wrong, I'm not a reformer of everybody in the world. ठीक है ना? It's a pragmatic way.
Yeah.
It's a very pragmatic way. I'm not here to reform every colleague of mine in the institute, right?
Right.
But I am here to do my things right. My students should see my conduct because I'm under observation all the time. And if possible, they should feel that they are getting a fair deal in the exchange of whatever they are that respect that they're giving. That exchange can be fair. Rest of the things we can. So anyhow, thank you. Hippo, one more minute. All right. I have another lecture at 1:30. Go ahead.
Yeah, so quickly I want to ask, I want to comment on the comment which you made about upload to download ratio.
Yes.
That actually the point also you made when we're critiquing something, when are not basically following the mainstream that is existing currently, and that's the reason you actually tend to download a lot of articles. For example,
Yes.
writing an article to contradict something which is mainstreamly believed in mainstream, then you might download more than 100 200 articles to make your argument and say that how this argument is different from all the arguments that is existing. That actually, so I take your point as that, the good idea is to upload everything you have to do. I mean, you are writing a blog article, you are writing a press release.
I have put all my work at my blog, anilji.sashti.org, for few 500, 700, whatever number, I have not counted it, but all of it is in open source. Every view that I have, I must share.
Yes.
If I want to.
Sir, that is the point. Sir, to express that as upload to download ratio, I have sort of problem, because we actually tend to download a lot of articles to write one article. So
No, that is true, but you also download movies.
That way. Okay.
You also download videos. So I'm saying, look at total GB that you downloaded and total GB that you uploaded. But I'm taking total download, not just papers. My question is, if you want to be a leader in your profession or in the world, India as a society wants to be a leader. What do you download? You download content that somebody else has uploaded, correct? So that influences our thought, isn't it? How will people get influenced by your thought if you don't share?
Yeah.
And sometimes your thoughts are half-baked. They become part of blog, not research paper. They become part of research paper when you process them properly. There is a journey between blog and a research paper. And many scholars write blogs which are as influential as research papers because they apply their mind even to that. And what's wrong with that? So I would say, I had a very unpopular view on Farmers Act, 3 bills that came out and became act. And I put down my article. Now, when BBC requested my comment, I said, look, you know my views. Have you read my article? Yes, we have read your article. All right. Because I thought farmers were asking wrong question. Their concern should have been income, which means reduction of the cost, just as increase the price. They only focus on one side of the equation, increasing price. They didn't focus on reducing the cost. And to me, that was wrong. Because Punjab gave free electricity, people use so much water that it leaches the nutrients and the cost becomes higher. That's wrong. That's not sustainable. I have a right to say this, no matter how many friends I lose in the process. Please understand that one of the consequences, Priya, is that you might lose some friends.
Yes.
It happens. But that's the price you pay for being yourself.
Yeah.
I don't think they are good friends. If they can't withstand a difference of opinion, then they're not good friends. I think good friends are those with whom you can fight and have a cup of tea afterwards. Yeah. Isn't it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ipu, can we close it now with your permission?
Sure, ma'am. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Gupta. I think many comments are coming, and I fully agree with these comments that it is indeed one of the few highlights of this DOCMAD that we are having. And a lot of it that we have learned during last 1 hour, I would just like to sum up in terms of, as scholars, what is the kind of ethics through the ethical framework through which we have to participate in the public policy dialogue. Then you spoke about the professional ethics, which really makes, which is very inspirational in the sense it actually is going to help us in maintaining a checks and balances in our daily work, in our daily life, in terms of like the idea about the sharing the findings with the informants. And it is not only you actually brought in the efficiency aspect as well, and not exactly you are talking it from the perspective of the ethical lenses. And so the idea of reciprocity and responsibility in the research is something which is really, really very important for each one of us, the youngsters who are getting into who are onboarding this journey of the academics, and who we are people like us who are into it. And we are now at the stage when we are actually, I would say, that going through more of, now we are with our experience in this field, we actually go through a lot of dilemmas and the hesitations, etc., that the kind of the wild guesses that I was making, a lot of it has been answered, sir, here. And I'm getting a lot of thing, as you said, that yes, it's not about being troublemaker. It's all about like the ideas, the concepts of samvedna that you talked about, the concept of swanta sukhai that you talked about. Yes, it is indeed, it's not only important for our personal life, it is indeed very, very important for our professional life. We are indeed very, very thankful for to you to agree for this talk. It has been indeed a very, very special talk for all of us. And I would like to, at the end, I would like to say that yes, you made us believe that profession will always be fairer than the organization, and we must continue our journey with this belief, with this philosophy. Thank you so much, sir.
Good luck. All the best. All the
Thank
best. All the best. And you're welcome. Anybody would like to write to me, welcome
you.
to write to me.
And I would be sending you the comments, the
Sure.
questions that were raised.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.